Hello everybody, and welcome back to the WordPress for Designers video screencast on blog.themeforest.net. I am Drew Douglas, and today we are going to tackle day 15 of our WordPress for Designers series. So we've talked a bit about our slider and our jQuery slider, and that's what we're going to do today. So let's go over a quick overview of what we hope to accomplish, and then we'll get started. We last left off with our theme looking something like this, and we need to fit some images in here. Recent portfolio images is one that could be used, but we need some kind of images on the left here that can slide and kind of show our recent work. And then, we just a basic text portfolio description up here, something like, please feel free to browse our recent work on the left. Whatever. We need something that's going to, give our end users a nice little visual idea of some of our recent work or recent images in a nice slider fashion. So I've looked around, and I wanted one that was just really simple, just something that can just slide our images around. That's that's all we need, with maybe an arrow or a counter or something. And I found by Nathan Searless, I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but anyway, it's called the jQuery looped slider, and of course I'll have the link for all of you below. But if you go to the page, you can download it, and you can see some examples under examples, and some of the basic markup that's required, and we're going to get into all of that and actually add a few more things we need. And then the basic CSS that's needed for the markup, and then how to kick off the whole script. So that's what we're going to cover today, and this is going to be a lot of it is just going to be getting our theme to look how we need it to with the CSS, and while at the same time making the slider work. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. The trickiest part about today is when you use these sliders, almost 100% of the time they're going to inject some kind of styling or some kind of positioning via the JavaScript so they can get it to slide properly. Which is great, but that also puts in the challenge of making sure that you can get those styles and what's needed for the slider to fit into our style. So we're going to need to use some absolute positioning tricks today and a few other things to get the buttons working, and that's what we will tackle one thing at a time, and it's not as difficult as it sounds. So that said, go ahead and download the slider, the looped jQuery slider, if you're following along at home, and we're going to move on. So open up whatever text editor you've been using. If you've been following along, you know that I'm a big fan of Coda, and so that's what I'll be using. Okay, if we take a look at our basic theme files here on the left, we'll remember that we have a lot of our CSS and image related things in our style folder. So what I'm going to do is upload some images I've already prepared for this slider under the folder of demo images to the style folder. So now we have a new folder. We have a new folder in our style folder, a new directory with 4 demo images of them, and I made them of animals because that seemed like the fun thing to do at the time. These are all courtesy of the Themeforest asset library if you're looking for somewhere to download free images to use and follow along. But you can see they're all the same size, and I figured it was better that I prepare them now than bore you guys through that process. So we've prepared some basic images for our slider. Now what we want to do is go ahead and add all the necessary files that we need. So I'll just go ahead and do this now. I'm going to download the looped slider JavaScript here and click OK. I'm going to unzip that. Alrighty. Well, it looks like I already had it there, but alright. What I'm going to do is go over to Style folder now, and I'm going to create another folder, and we're going to keep all of our JavaScript that we use for our theme in this folder. So I'm going to call it JS for JavaScript folder. I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to open up my loop slider, and I'm going to rename it loopslider.javascript and put it into my JavaScript folder. Whoops. Come on. Man, I'm just messing up everything right now. Okay, let's try that again. Put it into my, there we go, JavaScript folder. Okay, so now we have the one script that we need. Let's go ahead and get started with the basic markup, and we'll come back and we'll worry about linking to our scripts later. So we have all of our necessary slider information is going to be in the featured section. And what we're going to do today, and this is why this will be two parts, is we're going to hard code it here, meaning we're going to have all the content and the actual text hard coded into this file today so we can see if our slider works. And then when we come back for day 16, we are going to actually look at how to pull that information out of the WordPress admin panel. So all the user would have to do would go to WP admin, and we'll have a certain section there for featured portfolio images or something like that. And all they'll have to do is click add a new image, and it'll automatically be added. But today we're just going to hard code everything, and we're going to kind of look at the markup we need to get started. Okay, so I can remove my little spacer ampersand there, and now we're going to want a little info here that's going to be on the right. So we're going to give a div class of slide info, close it off, and I'll try to keep this as organized as I can for all of you. Give it a little h3 tag, something like our portfolio. And then just some dummy text. I guess I could get some lipsum ready, but I'll just say something like to the left you will find some of our recent work. You may click on the buttons below to view more of our work or our entire portfolio. Anyway, something simple. Obviously whatever you want to say. Okay, so we have that inside our div class of info. What we also want is another paragraph, and inside that some strong tags. And we're going to do this so we can exactly match our design as it was. And it's going to say interface plus design plus CSS slash XHTML. Okay. And if you don't know why we put that there, that's just kind of how the PSD had some of its text, and you'll see how we're going to style those strong tags in just a little later. Okay, let's move on. The next thing we need is our main container. We need to give it a div class of container, and you need to remember that some of the markup here in the names of our markup is important. If we go back to Firefox and onto the loop slider homepage, if we scroll down to markup, this is the required markup. You'll see that we actually do need a class named container, and the script is going to look and use that class to manipulate it. So we have a div class of container, and now inside of this div class we're going to have another nested class called slides. And again, if you need to remember any of this, you can reference the page here that I've linked to below. Okay, so now we have our div class of slides. This is going to hold all of our images that we want to slide through. Generally this would be your recent work portfolio images, or in our case, cute pictures of koalas and kangaroos and other cool Australian animals. So now what we need to do is add the images. Like I said, in day 16 we will learn how to do this how to pull it out of WordPress with a custom query, but for now we're just going to hard code them in so we can get our slider working, because we want to take it one thing at a time. One more thing, all of the images inside the class of slides need to have just a blank div wrapper around them, and this is so the script can properly execute some jQuery that it needs to. So we'll say image source, and we'll just do this for all of them. We'll say WP content, themes, paper business, style, demo images, and then I believe the first one is cyan, kangaroo.jpg. And I'm sorry I didn't write these out earlier, but it can't ever hurt to kind of refresh yourself and remember what kind of path you're looking for when you're working for WordPress. Sometimes when you force yourself to handwrite these paths, it actually is kind of a nice refresher of how the whole WordPress directory is set up. But anyway, I've copied the first one, so now I can come in here and say image source, paste it, and the second image was called koala, cyan koala.jpg. The third image, and I only have 4, so no worries. The third image is the image of our kookaburra, if that's how you say it. It's a crazy little animal. kookaburra.jpg. Whatever. And our last one, I believe it's that crazy cat. Yep. Alright. And our last one is Scott Wills _ cat.jpg. And for the alt text, we'll just put cat. Okay, so there we've put in all of our images now into our class of slides. So we need to move on, and now we're going to have an area for both of our buttons. We're going to call these 2 different buttons because they have 2 different features and background images. So we'll say div class of featured button, and again you will see what all of this markup is for when we do our CSS. href. For now it doesn't need to link to anything. It needs to have a class of previous, and don't forget to give it a title, I guess, previous. And inside this we'll just put prev like the theme says. And we need another anchor tag. Doesn't need to link anywhere, with a class of next. If you didn't guess, this is going to be our previous and next button to continue the slider. Next. Okay, like so. And next we need a portfolio button. This is the button that says view full portfolio. So we're going to give a div class of portfolio button. And inside we're just going to have an anchor. And title is going to be, for now, view full portfolio. And inside for the anchor text we'll just say view portfolio. Okay, believe it or not, we're almost done with the markup for our slider. We need one more thing, and this needs to be an unordered list with a class of pagination. Okay, and we're going to put, like I said, for now we're just going to hand code this. And we're just going to give it some anchor tags. Slider 1, we'll have 1. Then we can just kind of copy and paste here to get 4 of them. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. And the same thing for the text. Okay. And for our last one, we actually want we want to add one more list item here, and it's going to have a class of total, T-O-T-A-L, and it's going to have an anchor tag inside of that as well, title of total, and it will say out of 4. And you will see why we're doing this in just a bit when we get to the CSS and start styling it. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that, and that is all of the markup we need for our slider. It might seem like it's a little bit, but it's really not that much. Just a basic kind of container for our images, a few of our buttons, and then some basic pagination is really all we have going on here. So now we want to now we need to let's take a look at how that looks. And if you don't remember, if we go to front page, which is what our home page is, we're including the featured section.php file, which is all of this markup right here. So we're including our slider there. So let's go ahead and have a look at what that looks like. And like I said, this will not be pretty, so no worries. Okay, you can see we got stuff going on everywhere, all over the place, and that's because we haven't done any of the necessary CSS steps yet, and then also we haven't actually kicked off the script. So let's start with some of the CSS. We can go ahead and close out front page.php and scroll down to, let's see, where it says featured styles, and then we're going to just kind of add an area for slider styles. Alright, and I'll make sure to take my time on some of the more important styles, and then the ones that are just kind of for presentation I won't take as much time on. You'll understand at least the basic ones. But yeah, let's start with container. Remember, we have a class of container, and we have necessary styles here that we need to give it. So for container, we're going to say width 500, height 375 pixels, overflow is going to be hidden, and we'll talk about that later. That's important. And we need to set its position to relative. Okay, moving on to our slides class. And again, this is all just necessary markup that we're putting in from right here to fit our needs. Slides is going to be position absolute, and top is going to be 0, left 0. Okay, now let's do slides div. Any div that's within our slides class. Again, position absolute. Top 30 pixels. This will give it some our images some space from the top, and some kind of padding like. Width 500 pixels, and display is going to be none. And that's because the JavaScript is going to handle the displaying of the different images for when they need to slide. Okay, let's say slides, div, and then image. So any image tag within the div within the class of slides. Let's give it some basic padding on the left, and we'll say about 30 pixels, and cursor is going to be pointer, because they're going to be able to actually click on the images and go to the next one if they want. And we'll go ahead and save there and move on. Let's see what that gives us. And again, don't freak out until we've completed this, because this is going to kind of be a mess. Okay, you can see it kind of got rid of our images, and that's to be expected for now. Okay, we're going to skip down here, and we're going to leave some space for a few other things that we're going to come back to. And we're going to say slide info. If you need a little refresher on our markup here, slide info is the div class that's holding all of our our like our text information, like welcome to our portfolio, etc. Slide info is going to have a width, of 365 pixels. I'm going to float it to the right so it can be so it makes sure the text shows up to the right of our images. We don't want them the text right behind our images. We want a font size of 13 pixels, and we want to give it some basic margins. So we're going to say 25 pixels on the top, 30 pixels on the right, none on the bottom, none on the left. Okay, so we got some basic slide info styles down. Now what about our H3 tag? You'll recall that we need to style that. This would be the little our portfolio text right here. That needs to be blue and a lot bigger. So we're going to say slide info H3 color is going to be, let me look at my notes here, number 224E70 for the hex value. Font size we're going to change to 27 pixels, and the margin, give it 0 pixels on the top, none on the right, but 10 pixels on the bottom. Alrighty, so let's save that and let's kind of refresh and see how we're looking. Okay, it's looking slowly but surely, it's looking better. You can see our text here now is on the right. It's difficult to see because it's still white, but we have our images that will be here on the left, and now our text description of our portfolio here, and our buttons will eventually appear down here. So yeah, let's keep working on that. Slide info P for our paragraph tags. We need to style that now. We're going to say line height is going to be 21 pixels. Margin, we're going to give it about 10 pixels on the top, none on the right, 20 on the bottom, and none on the left. Alrighty. And let's see, let's go ahead and save that. We'll come back to the color. We're going to go slide info P strong, and now we're going to take care of those strong tags that we had in our description. We're going to change the color to a hex value of 215379. It's kind of a darker blue. Font size 15 pixels, and font weight normal. Okay, and if you're wondering how I'm getting, I got an email the other day of how I'm getting these color values easily. The easiest way to do it is if you have Photoshop, you can just open up the eyedropper tool, and that will allow you to pick out any color you want on any kind of text or really anything. So, okay. Now let's change the color for the paragraph tags inside the featured section. We can actually just scroll up to featured section here and kind of knock it all out at once, and take advantage of cascading style sheet features, and just change the color to 626262 for the featured section ID div. So if we refresh, okay, you can see this is the strong tag that we had earlier. That I was talking about, and you can kind of see how that works. We change it to a different color and a slightly bigger font size. We have our description and our portfolio, so it's getting there. It's a little bit closer than we were. So now let's pick up where we left off, and where we left a little bit of space for ourselves. And this is where we're going to handle the pagination, which is the unordered list, and also how we're going to handle the buttons, which is going to require a little bit of tricky positioning work, but it's nothing we can't handle. So let's do this. Let's do unordered list. Something I tend to do is, instead of calling a UL tag an unordered list, I call it a unit list. I don't know why I do that, but I say it all the time. So if you catch me saying that, just know that I mean an unordered list. Anyway, unordered list with a class of pagination, and for any list item in that, we are going to say position absolute top 241, font size, I'm sorry, left 520, font size is going to be 13 pixels, and we're going to actually set it to display none. So if I save this, come back over here, okay, see the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4? That's our little, those are our list classes, and well, so is the out of 4. And if we refresh, we're actually not displaying them by default. And you see how we're going to use CSS to kind of do a little tricky fix here. It's going to be nice, but you'll see what I mean shortly. After that, we're going to say owner list pagination with a list of total, where the list item has a class of total. We're going to display block. Whoops. And we're going to say left 527 pixels. And remember, a lot of this is because of the way the slider, why we need to position these things, is because the slider is setting some things relative and absolutely, and we need to get them looking like we have it in the PSD while the slider still works. So we have to use a little bit of positioning and display tricks to kind of get around it. But I think you'll find it all comes together really, really nicely here. Okay, so we've got that. That was for our total, which is the out of 4 list item. Like 1 out of 4, 2 out of 4, 3 out of 4. You're going to see what that does. We're going to use a kind of a cool CSS technique here to show that. Next we're going to say unordered list with a class of pagination, list item with a class of active. And this is going to be the current slider number, so like 1, 2, 3, or 4, or however many, whatever number the image it's on. And we're just going to say display block, because we do want to show the active one. And what I mean by that is, see our list items here, the 1, 2, 3, and 4, when our slider script actually does the work, it's going to add a class of active to whichever one of these it's on. So if we're on image 2, this list item is going to have a class of active, and therefore we want to show the 2 because we only want to show what active slider image we're on. That way, since we're displaying the total, which is out of 4, and the only active one, we're going to get the 1 out of 4. And then when we click the next one, it's going to change to 2 out of 4, since only the active class is being shown. And if that doesn't make sense yet, it will very shortly. Let's continue on. Unordered list, pagination, list class A, with any anchor links. Just need to do some cosmetics here. 93, 93, 93. Okay, so let's save that and see what we got. Okay, so you can see we have out of 4 showing up here. You're going to see how that comes into play shortly. Okay, let's handle our button now. Remember our we have a class named featured button. We're going to do some work here on it. We're going to say background URL. Oh, I'm sorry, we want to set that to transparent first. URL is going to equal style images slider underscore button dot JPEG, no repeat, and scroll. Okay, it's going to have a width of 128 pixels, a height of 30, and in the featured button, this is going to be the little button where they can click next or previous for the slider to kind of navigate through the slider images. So this is an important little piece of CSS. Position is going to be absolute. Top is going to be 233, and of course I've already made these measurements beforehand, so Don't worry if you don't understand them, it's just a matter of getting things lined up and working with our slider. And lastly, a font size of 13 pixels. Next, our featured button A, just is also just a little bit of cosmetics. It's going to be a color of 038 0A5. Alrighty, let's go ahead and save that, refresh, and see where we're at. Okay, so things are starting to look closer. We have our previous and next button, but it's still not quite there yet. So we're going to keep going with our styles. And now we're going to say portfolio button. Which is actually the button which is going to say view all of our portfolio. And believe it or not, the background is slightly different than the featured button. So we'll say background, transparent, URL, style, images, portfolio, underscore button dot JPEG, no repeat, and scroll. Some basic background properties there. Has a width of 129 pixels, a height of 31 pixels. Position, of course, is absolute. Top, 233. Left, 560. And font size, 13. I probably could have figured out a way to have these share class for some of the more common styles that we're using here, but you know, it's okay. Portfolio button A. I promise you guys we're getting very close to having a working slider here. Our color is going to be 0380A5. And we're actually going to need to position this some. Say position absolute, top 8 pixels, and left is going to be 17 pixels. Alrighty, and you'll see how that comes into play. And we'll go ahead and save, refresh, and take a look at what we got. Okay, we have a nice little view portfolio button there. You can see how we kind of worked out the positioning to get it to where we want it, and we're almost done with our styles. So the last few things we need to style are just these little next and previous buttons. So let's do, you'll remember we have a class of next and previous, so we'll do position. And since we have all this, we can take advantage of our relative positioning by using absolute. We can get it exactly where we want it to in the featured section. Left, 54 pixels and a top of 7 pixels. And again, I've already just kind of worked these out when I was going over and preparing for this for day 15. And for our previous class, we're going to do the same thing except different top and left values. Say top 7 pixels, left 54 pixels. Save it, come back, refresh. Oops, sorry, I duplicated that, didn't I? Left needs to be 15 pixels, not 54. And there we go, and it looks just like, well, just like it should, really. And so you see that we have our out of 4, but we're kind of missing our little 1, 2, 3, or 4 here, and that's because we haven't kicked off our script, and it hasn't added the necessary classes and things yet. So believe it or not, we are done with our CSS. We have all of our styles in place, so we need to do a few more things, and then we can get our slider script working. So now what we're going to do is we've added our functions, or our loop slider to our JavaScript folder. Now we need to add another file here, and this is going to be called functions.javascript. And we're going to open this up, and now we're going to do some basic jQuery here to kick off our slider and tell it, kind of tell it on what element to have a slider on. So we'll say function. Okay, and inside of this, we will say our ID of featured section. So if I come over here to our featured section, this is our main div class. And then I can say dot looped. Oops. Make sure I spell this right. Looped slider. And that's all we need to do is call it like so. Okay, so we're going to save that. Okay, and now what we want to do is we need to link to these from our header file. So we'll come over here, and after all of our style sheets and all that, first we need to link to jQuery. If I go over here and type into Google AJAX APIs, and I go to the first hit, oops, yeah, here we go, to the libraries and go to jQuery, we can actually let Google host it for us if I copy the path here. And this way, you know, if you're letting Google host it for us, we'll get any cached versions from them will already be served to the user, so they won't have to re-download it. And it's just kind of a speed improvement and an easier way to do things. So I'll do script type equals text JavaScript, source equals, and then the Google link that we just copied and pasted. Now we need to link to two more scripts. We need to link to our looped slider jQuery script and then our function script. So we'll do text slash JavaScript source, and it's just going to be, let's see here, whoops, WP-content themes, paper business, style, JS, and looped slider.js. Hopefully I spelled all of that right. And lastly, script type is text slash JavaScript. Source is equal to WP content themes paper business style JS and functions .javascript. Okay, so now we've added those to our header, and we'll come back and check it in Firebug. Okay. So we go to HTML, check out our head, and we come down here and we go to scripts. We can see that a jQuery is showing up. We can see our loop slider script is showing up, and we can see that our little functions script is also showing up. Okay, and click on that. You can see our little sliders working. Probably a good one. I'm going to go back and add some more padding here on the left. You know, obviously not a huge mark, or just a little vanity deal. But you know, our slider is actually working now. So we have our featured section markup, necessary styles, which is really the hardest and most important part, and our slider. And like I said, I'll add more padding and kind of style this up a little better for day 16. But did you guys notice the 3 out of 4 here, how that's shown up? 4 out of 4, 1 out of 4, etc. That's kind of a cool little CSS trick we're using. If we come back to our CSS file and we look into our active one, we can see we have it displayed to block, which means we are showing, and you remember we're not showing by default any of the list items, only the ones with the class of active or total. And so what this is doing, if we come into, refresh and come into Firebug, see if I can inspect this over here. Okay, you can see that the jQuery has added a class of active to whatever the active image is. So if I click next, now it's changed the active class to the next list item that we have. So there's our basic slider, hard-coded, of course. Like I said, ideally you'd put images of your portfolio, other things here. They can also click on the image too. We can change all kinds of settings when we get more into this. But it works like it was designed to. It works to show off the recent stuff in the portfolio. Now what we're going to do on day 16 is we're going to come back in here. We're going to create kind of a custom query up here at the top, a WordPress query, and we're going to pull out information that they've inputted in images they've inputted from the admin section, and we're going to have them automatically added to the markup here. So the end user, whoever ends up using this theme, will not actually have to come into here, and they won't have to hard code anything. They'll be able to do it from the back of the WP admin section of WordPress, and that is going to be what the little trickier part. So hopefully you guys kind of got the basics down of creating and implementing a slider in WordPress. A lot of it is just getting used to CSS and making sure that you know all about positioning and just the box model and how things are going to show, because the hardest part about preparing this was just getting everything to show up where you needed it to, at the same time not breaking the slider and the necessary slider CSS that almost all of them require. So I think that's where I'll leave off today. Whoops. I was going to, like always, please encourage you guys to, if you haven't already, subscribe to the Themeforest blog. It'll help keep me employed. It'll help keep us happy and bringing you guys all these videos. So if you want to subscribe, that'd be really appreciated. Any questions or comments you guys have, feel free to let me know below. And like I said, day 16, we will be writing some really cool queries here to pull out our slider information from the user. So yeah, I think that's about it. I hope I didn't forget anything, and happy WordPress coding, guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye.